U.S. Capitol under siege. A mob of the president's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol today, overpowered police, and forced lawmakers to barricade themselves for safety. Plus, local politicians react, including Governor Jay Inslee. And after today's events, Representative Catherine Morris Rogers announced she will no longer challenge the electoral vote. Also tonight, Spokane Public Schools laid out a plan to bring all students back to in-person learning by the spring, some as soon as the 20th of this month. What we know tonight. Tonight, the nation's capital is in lockdown. A curfew is in effect. The National Guard deployed as the House and the Senate reconvene to certify electoral votes for President-elect Joe Biden. Safety precautions are in place to protect members of Congress after a day of unsettling violence and unrest. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for KREM 2 News at 11. I'm Mark Hanrahan. Regina is off tonight. Lawmakers are back at work after a mob of President Trump's supporters stormed the Capitol building earlier today. One woman was shot and killed. 4 people have died from medical emergencies. Let's go to Natalie Brand in the Capitol for more.
The Capitol complex is now secure, but the counting of electoral votes is dragging into the early morning hours here on the East Coast because an objection was raised to Pennsylvania's electors, and the House is still currently debating that objection, but will be voting soon. Then lawmakers must reconvene in a joint session and get through the remaining states to formalize President-elect Joe Biden's win.
The yeas are 7, the nays are 92. The objection is not sustained.
The Senate defeated a second objection, this time to Pennsylvania's electoral votes. Both chambers also voted down challenges to Arizona.
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are lawfully elected and will become the president and the vice president of the United States on January the 20th.
It's past time to accept reality, to reaffirm our democracy, and move on.
Earlier, rioters stormed the building, breaking through doors and busting windows. Capitol Police drew their weapons at one barricaded door from inside the House.
You have to go home now.
President Trump posted a video that has since been removed from Facebook and Twitter, urging calm. Hours earlier, he addressed a gathering near the White House.
We will never give up. We will never concede.
President-elect Joe Biden also addressed the chaos here, calling it an assault on democracy and an insurrection.
Today's reminder, a painful one, that democracy is fragile, and to preserve it requires people of goodwill, leaders with the courage to stand up.
In response to the day's chaos, several Democratic lawmakers are now calling for President Trump to be removed from office.
During a news conference tonight, we learned that in addition to the woman who was shot and later died of her injuries, there were 3 other deaths from separate medical emergencies, and the police chief in D.C. says more than 50 people were arrested today. On Capitol Hill, I'm Natalie Brand. Back to you.
Natalie, thank you very much. And tonight we are learning more about the scale of the assault on the Capitol. The Associated Press is reporting that D.C. police officials say 2 pipe bombs were recovered. One outside the Democratic National Committee, another outside the Republican National Committee. Police say they also found a cooler from a vehicle that had a long gun inside, as well as a Molotov cocktail on Capitol grounds. New at 11 tonight, Washington Senator Patty Murray is calling for President Trump's removal under the 25th Amendment. She says this move will prevent the president from inciting further harm in the days ahead. In a statement, she writes, quote, "Congress is continuing the process of certifying the election, but only after a day of chaos and violent extremism in the Capitol, where some of our worst fears about the harm this president is willing to incite were realized," unquote. Meantime, here in Washington, demonstrators broke through a gate in front of the governor's mansion in Olympia today. Before that, a peaceful crowd of about 300 to 400 people gathered at the Capitol, upset with the 2020 election results. Washington State Patrol said they are investigating how it was even possible for protesters to make it onto the mansion grounds. Tonight, the governor said those actions will not intimidate him.
But I have some good news tonight to share with my fellow Washingtonians. Those acts of intimidation will not succeed in any way, shape, or form. We will continue the work we're doing to protect the health of Washingtonians.
Meantime, here in Spokane today, protesters gathered starting around 11 a.m. for what they called the Stop the Steal rally. Unlike the scenes in Washington, D.C., protesters here remain peaceful throughout the day. They gathered today in support of the president's claims that the elections were unfair.
We do not believe that the elections were actually fair. We are defending our republic and we are stopping the steal.
Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodward issued a statement regarding today's assault on the Capitol. She said in part, quote, "This was a sad day for our country as members of our community feel compelled to respond to the national conversation or make their voices heard. Spokane expects that it will be done peacefully, respectfully, and appropriately." Meantime, Spokane County Democrats released a lengthy statement today calling the assault on the Capitol, quote, "a coordinated domestic terrorist attack." They go on to urge, quote, "the politicians who are complicit in this need to be held accountable to set a precedent that this cannot happen or be swept under the rug. Our democracy is at stake. We cannot accept years of language that incites resistance." Spokane County Republicans, however, did not release a statement regarding today's breach, but instead released a resolution supporting objections to the Electoral College votes. It reads, the party supports the actions of senators and representatives raising objections to the results of several states whose election results may have been in question, and urges Republican House members from the state of Washington to vote in favor of the objection. On Facebook, the group did urge Trump supporters to keep peaceful during those protests. In the meantime, the Democrats have won both Senate seats in the state of Georgia. The Associated Press declared Democrat Jon Ossoff as the winner of the runoff election against incumbent Republican David Perdue. CBS has also previously called the other runoff in Georgia for Democrat Raphael Warnock over Kelly Loeffler. All right, let's switch gears. Talk weather. Another rainy day across the inland Northwest. Meteorologist Thomas Patrick standing by. And Thomas, I believe that you are in the rain out there on the Outdoor Weather Center tonight.
I very much am, Mark, but I can report that it's not as bad as it was about an hour ago. So
happy to hear that.
Yeah, can easily tough it without the umbrella. I thought it might have been a close call at 10 o'clock. And what I described as kind of a light, moderate rain. It's kind of eased back to light from our studios in the South Hill, of course, from our Outdoor Weather Center. But yeah, you might be able to see a couple raindrops just trickling in the studio lights here. You see the raindrops on Doppler radar all across Spokane County as well as Whitman County and areas of the Palouse, just seeing that very light rainfall. Our snow levels are at about 2,500 to 3,000 feet, so kind of up towards the 4th of July pass elevation mark, but all of our area cities that are seeing precipitation is coming down as rain. But it's kind of a cold rain at 37 degrees, but I use that word kind of relatively speaking because 37 in January is actually mild comparatively speaking. In fact, we've had a lot of days in the 40s. I think tomorrow will be right there as well. If anything, you can tell that my green screen is actually a little bit wet behind me here. 38 degrees through the morning hours tomorrow. Should be up to around 40 tomorrow afternoon as we get yet another break from the rainfall before that next round of precipitation heads our way on Friday. But I'm interested in the mid-January outlook, that long-term forecast, because we stay well above average through the mid part of this month, and we'll see a lot more days in the 40s. So I'll show you that extended outlook and how warm it gets, and more snow on the way, believe it or not. So all that coming up.
Sounds good, Thomas. We'll talk to you later in the broadcast. More Spokane students will be heading back to in-person learning. That was the announcement from Spokane Public Schools earlier tonight. KREM 2's Brandon T. Jones has more on the announcement and the timeline for a return to in-person learning.
Spokane Public Schools have been phasing students back into the classroom since October 7th. The process started with kindergarten. A few weeks later, first grade returned. Then second graders came back at the end of November.
We will continue to be really thoughtful, and that's why we developed a three-phase plan.
As the school year continues to progress, a timeline to get all students back has finally been set. Third graders will be next in line to return starting January 20th. Two groups will alternate days in the classroom until February 2nd.
And that was per the direction and guidance of our health officials.
When it comes to phasing students back in, SBS has moved at a slower rate compared to other surrounding school districts. Out of the 5,000 students attending in person right now, 150 are actively quarantined. That number could increase with more students present inside of buildings, but the school board is confident in the steps they are taking to keep students safe.
The decision to resume or expand in-person learning is complex.
Phase 2 of reopening will target 5th and 6th graders. A hybrid schedule will begin on February 17th. Phase 3 then moves on to middle school and high school, and they would begin on March 1st. All of the dates are subject to change depending on COVID cases in the county.
Where for 8 days, students will attend in a hybrid model, alternating. prior to returning to full-time.
Preparing staff will be crucial as more students return. The plan going forward is to have several health and safety webinars to walk through all of the protocols. From Spokane, Brandon T. Jones, KREM 2 News.
We'll be sure to closely follow that process. Meantime, the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association, the governing body for high school sports in the state, once again revised its high school sports schedule. Due to Governor Inslee's new phase plan released yesterday, the WIAA has decided to move fall sports to season 1, which begins on February 1st. Fall sports include football, volleyball, girls soccer, and cross country. This decision was made due to the fact that fall sports are played outside and therefore easier to play than winter sports, which are played inside. Per the WIAA, the decision of which sports will be played in season 2 and season 3, that will be reviewed on January 19th. Friends and family of Vince Bozzi, the owner and publisher of Spokane Coeur d'Alene Living, announced that their beloved businessman had passed away from the coronavirus today. Vince had been battling the virus in the ICU for 4 weeks. In a new post on a GoFundMe page benefiting Vince, they said that he had fought valiantly and that he felt and heard their prayers. Right now, the family is asking for privacy as they grieve. You'll recall Vince's wife, Emily, lost her life to the coronavirus earlier this month. We are continuing to follow the breach at the U.S. Capitol tonight. Next, what local leaders are saying in response to the insurrection. Plus later, we are continuing to follow that breaking news we brought you from last night about an officer-involved shooting in North Spokane. We explain why officers believe last night's suspect was also involved in a homicide in central Spokane back in December.